Hello, welcome to One Place in Conversation podcast, episode 16. We have a special guest hosting the podcast for us today. Many of you will recognize him. It's our very own Isaac Harvey, MBE. Hello, Isaac.
Hello there. Hi. Thanks for having me.
How are you?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been here. So, yeah, it's good to be back.
Well, good to have you back.
Yeah,
Well,
nice.
we're talking about Black History Month. I'll leave it to you.
So, hello, everyone, and welcome to One Place in Conversations. Thank you, Safer, for having me on again. And it's been a while since I've done an intro like this, but it's nice to be the guest host for episode 16. And today I'm joined by my sister Rachel, who's co-hosting with me today. After all the things that we've done, I never thought we would ever be co-hosting together. You know, we've done tall ship sailing and seeing me do skating, but hosting a podcast, that's a first, isn't it?
Well, it is for us, and I should know when you say, are you free on Wednesday afternoon to ask more questions? But I'm looking forward to it.
So today we are talking about Black History Month, with this year's theme being Reclaiming Narratives. And that's highlighting the true, often untold stories of Black heritage and celebrating the complexity and achievements throughout history. Here to take control of these stories, honor the heroes, and challenge the narratives that have often missed acknowledging the full contributions of Black individuals, both here in the UK and globally. Today, we are here to listen and engage with people with lived experience, and we're going to be creating a space where everyone can share openly and honestly of our lived experience and who we are. And just to say that we are no experts and we are only sharing our own opinions. And today we are joined with guest Sharon, who will be speaking with us. Hello, Sharon.
Hello, Isaac. Hi, Rachel. Thank you for inviting me. This is the first podcast I've ever done, so I'm a podcast baby. But I've listened to loads of podcasts, so I've got a feel. So you're going to be gentle with me, hopefully, around the question.
We'll be very gentle. Right, so let's get on with some introductions. So I know I've mentioned briefly, but my name is Isaac Harvey, MBE. I'm a disability advocate, content creator, and I guess now I can put on my CV that I'm a podcast host. But now on to Rachel.
So I'm Rachel, and as Isaac said, I'm Isaac's sister, and I am new also at co-hosting, but my background is in business operations and administration. So I hope to be able to bring my lived experience of family and work to this podcast.
Nice. And to you, Sharon?
Hi, I'm Sharon. I have worked for public sector for 19 and a half years, and then I moved to working for a higher educational institute that I currently do now. I have used One Place East to some of the courses they run around creative writing. I found that really good. I'm a mother, I'm a sister, and I'm also a daughter, and I care for my mum who is living with dementia. All of my sisters do that because there's 5 of us. So yeah, that's an experience being a carer, a sandwich carer as they call it. Really interesting and challenging, but it's also, I'm grateful and rewarding because I still have my mother who's going to be 84.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Great.
See, I've learned already. I've never heard that term, sandwich carer.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Because it's you're carer, and also I'm a parent. So I'm, because of my age, I'm also got an elderly parent who's alive, and I've also got a daughter who is 11 years old. So the term is the sandwich carer.
Oh, from both ends, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like new every day.
You do. It can be, but I wouldn't be able to do that role if I didn't have all my sisters supporting me. So it's a very, it can be challenging, it can be rewarding, it can be stressful, but
Yes.
we get through it. It's the reason I get through it is because I've got my sisters who support me. My sister who helps with mum when I'm able to, when I go to work, and my sisters come round and they all support mum because she lives. She gets home care, so that's a really good thing. And I know that my mum flourishes within that because she sees my 11-year-old daughter every day when she says hi, nanny, and all of that. So yeah. It's my mum worked for 28 years in the NHS, but she retired in 1999. So she's seen it all, really, in regards to.
Okay.
And you can describe her as they call it the Windrush generation, but my mum came later in the 1960s. My dad came first, and then my mother came after because the legislation had slightly changed. So yeah, they had to have their visas and their work permits, and through the NHS she'd worked. So yeah, that was basically that. They came in, I think, 1962, and my mum came in 1963. I think so. That was the. Okay. So yes, so that's they termed that the Windrush generation, but
after the boat, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was after the boat. So I'm parents of that. I'm a child of that generation, and I've seen so much. It's so interesting that we're discussing Black History Month and taking back the narrative. When I grew up in the 70s and 80s, we didn't have Black History Month at all.
Yes.
Yeah, it's only when I went on to do further education, higher education, that I learned about Black history and prominent figures within history. And it's also more now. But you would wish that this is all embedded, not just in one month, throughout the month, really.
Well, thank you for all that.
I've given you sort of like a plethora of all this.
Yeah, no, there's a lot
There's
there.
lots
I
to
mean,
digest there, isn't there? So yeah.
yeah, I mean, for me, I do relate to the support of those around me. I feel our family, me and Rachel, all together, we're quite a strong, bonded family when it comes time to come together. And I really saw that when our dad became poorly and had dementia himself. We all kind of put our feet in to really support each other during that. Rachel and our brothers and sisters all came about once or twice a week, and everyone played their part in supporting each other. And I think without that, it would have been very difficult, but together we really came together. I mean, I guess you would see the same, Rachel, our family.
It's about spreading the role, and everybody is different and has different strengths and weaknesses, and it's about recognizing that and seeing where you can step in and where, and it's not so easy for people who are perhaps further away or whatever, but yeah, it comes back to the strength of the families, and I do believe that all comes from our parents. So our father came a bit earlier. He's actually sailed into Tilbury, I believe, and he ended up in Wales. That's how we met our mum. He was from quite a big family. I think there was 7 or 8 siblings, and that kind of transferred down to us. So growing up, we were always very tight, and so gosh, I was mid-20s when Isaac came to us, and again, as a family unit, we're all supportive in helping with Isaac when growing up, and again, that all stems from the generation, our parents' generation of family unity, strength, and really just getting on with it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we've had to get on with it.
Crack on and get on with it, and that's sort of the ethos that we grew up with for my mum and dad. Because you crack on, you do it. You work hard, you study hard, go off to uni, and get your job. All of those type of emphasis, and that was I was brought up with, and it was when you reflect on things back, how it was like, you understand why they did that. they had come from a nice island. My parents were from St Vincent, and they'd come to England in their 20s. You know, it must have been really, really scary for them also. But they didn't show it. Well, they didn't show it to us when we were growing up. But it must have been, if you're coming from a country that, and coming from where you've lived most of your life, and you're entering into somewhere new, where not a lot of people look like you, and it's got to be really scary for me. I think about it and I think, gosh, that must be really, maybe scary is the wrong word, but that sort of feeling that they had to come into a place, a country that was new to them, that was cold. And my mum said to me once, when she saw snow for the first time, she said, "Oh, that's what she read about in Christmas Carol at school," because she remembers snow in regards to that. So also they're climatising about all of that. So that must have been really, I don't know, daunting, but it does actually, because you're used to this way, but you're coming to that way. And, you know, it just was... I think they were really strong and resilient. I suppose that's where we also get our resilience too.
I think it's also about why people left the Caribbean and other islands to come to the UK. It's about what was described, put to them. And, you know, they were coming here because they were invited. People came to the UK, the motherland, because after the war, you know, come here. And so I think a bit of excitement and, you know, and when you look back at the old films and everything, they're always dressed in their finest because, you know, and it's that sense of pride and self-worth. And then can you imagine then arriving and you're then faced with, you know, the racism, not being able to find anywhere to live, not being able to get the jobs. And all of that is the narrative that has only more recently been exposed. And then actually understanding what that reality looked and felt like is just absolutely massive. To then have to raise a family, you know, go to work, and so many people, you know, back then there were 6 of us, and you know, doing night shifts and day shifts, and then having to come home and juggle the time and all of that, being faced with everything and the reality of, come to the UK and get a job actually isn't what it was like for people.
No, it didn't, what their reality felt. I don't know what they felt that they would. The roads were paved with gold. I think they felt that, you know, that perception that they had, and then when they came, it was like it wasn't like that at all. It was just cold. How many that you shared a kitchen, how many you'd have to eat, and you'd have to sleep in the same room. You had to put coins in the meter to ensure that
I remember that.
I'm only remembering what my mum and my dad had said to me around the fact that that was it. You know, it was really quite, but yet there was still that spirit of togetherness, because there were people from their own island, and people came together. So it looked a bit miserable and whatever, but still there was that they all, you know, there was that support. You had when people wanted to start buying their houses, they had the partner hands, as they called them back in the day. You would buy, you would put money in, and then you would, if you were wanting to buy something, and put a deposit down for a house and things like that. That was the unofficial sort of, or the bank.
The partners,
the partner. All of those things in regards to that made it feel, I don't know. We remember it was sad times, but there was also, you've got to also remember those positive times, and it made us work more together in regards to that. So I think that's a positive. But there is also the bits where when we reflect on really the times that were really, really hard. But going back to Black History Month, I would like it to be that the curriculum would always have this, what my daughter's been
Mm.
taught at school,
Yeah.
always. We can, there are black scientists, there are there's so many black women and men that she can relate to or resonate with when she looks through the books, and when she's taught at school. And I think that's really a good thing. But for me, I feel I would like it to be more than one month. That would what I would say. And going back to that, I think we need to have it in bed. And I think it's about an appreciation, people understanding our culture. And I think when I was growing up, the word that they tended to like to use, I remember when I did A-level sociology and they had a book and we looked at education and race in education. There was a sociologist, I think it was David Driver, I can't remember, but he talked of the word assimilation. And it's not about assimilation. I would say it's about, this is my view, it's not
Of
about
course.
assimilating into the culture. It's about appreciating the culture that we have and appreciating other cultures in regards to that. Not to assimilate into what is, a culture that you live. It's about, yes, there's that culture where you live, but you have also your own culture. And it's about assimilating and working and understanding. It's always people, I think, when we don't know something, it's possibly lack of information, but when you understand it, then you have an appreciation of that. And I always say it's around appreciation of different cultures and different views. That's your view. That's good. Thank you. I really know that. But this is my view. And thank you. So it's appreciation around each other's views. And there is no wrong or right. There is no wrong or right, I don't think, in
I
regards to
I
that.
can definitely relate to that. When I became more of an advocate and speaking to different people with intersectionality, disability, race, culture, all of the above. When I joined LinkedIn, I had the great opportunity of connecting with people and hearing their stories and their lived experiences, which really opened my eyes to whole different worlds I never really thought about. And that's not because I'm ignorant, I just didn't know or had the opportunity of connecting with someone like that. So I've learned a lot through stories and people's lived experience. And yes, they might do something totally different to me, but as you say, it's not wrong or right. That's how they do it. And if they're not hurting anybody, then that should be allowed for anyone to
Absolutely.
feel like they could do what they want, well, how they've grown up, and that's how they do it. We should
Yeah.
really be respecting that, and again, as you say, appreciating that person for being who they are, and that's what they bring to the table and what they bring to life.
But
Um,
do you think though that that's perhaps because you are somebody with an open mind and you're open to listening and taking on board other people's perspectives, other people's views, and actually keen to learn from other people? Because it might be that there's people who have their view and that's it.
yeah,
That, and as you talked about,
there is.
ignorance is what, if you're ignorant about somebody else's situation, you can't empathize or take on their view.
Mm,
If you are open to hearing about somebody, and that goes falls over into, we're talking about Black History Month, other cultures, if you have got no interest, don't want to understand why somebody might need to, take time out and go and do their evening prayers, and you see that as a slight, well, they're going off to do their prayers. I want to go out and do. It's not about that. It's understanding why people are doing that, and then appreciating and understanding. Wow, to have that kind of faith is amazing. Rather than thinking, oh, they're going and having time off again. For me, it's about learning about other people's religions,
Yeah.
wants, needs, and going with that, really, rather than people can turn things into a negative. But thankfully, Isaac, you are the type of person to want to learn, want to understand, and and appreciate people for who they are.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like I've always had that inclination to want to learn about others, but I think that really went to the next level when I went through my mental health journey, where I was kind of working internally still. And because I wasn't right internally, it was blocking me out from the outside world, where I guess I could say I was somewhat selfish, in the ways of thinking and only thinking about my own happiness. The way that my mindset was at the time, I don't think I was as wanting to learn about others until I got to a point now where I feel a lot better internally, um, and allow me to learn about different perspectives and listen to people. And I think it really did push when I would say I properly became an advocate with disability and connecting with others within the field to hear their lived experiences and how they live life on a day-to-day basis. And then you have the intersectionality of their race and how that's affected their work and going to get healthcare and all those kind of things. So it's been very fascinating being on this journey, and I feel being part of this journey is definitely, yeah, definitely allowed me to appreciate life on a whole new level. I do have the obstacles I face, but others have other challenges, and um, it's it's it makes me feel like I'm not alone in some situations as well.
But do you think that that is also a part of not not undermining your journey, but all of us, you get to a point where there's a growing up stage where
Mm.
life is about you. When you're younger, of course it's about you, because that's, when you're in school, what do you have to worry about? Getting up, getting to school on time. If you've got your school books, what am I doing after school? It's all about me. And then as you grow up and you
Mm.
realise actually there's a whole big world out there and there's other people's opinions, then actually I need to, take into consideration. But also, do you think perhaps, Isaac, your challenges that you've had to go through, that we've had to go through with your disability? Oh, I remember you saying, finding out about, you're a black guy in a wheelchair. You, and correct me if I'm wrong, you used to feel more, I'm a wheelchair user. Oh,
Yeah.
actually, but I'm also a black guy.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, disability was the one thing where I felt I was most discriminated against, such as not being able to get onto a bus, not being able to get on the trains, having to tell people 48 hours in advance that I want to get on the train, lifts not working, needing assistance to do basic things like going to the toilet. All these different things was our biggest barrier, and the way I saw it and the lens I had on was disability being my biggest barrier.
Because it
And that was
was.
the, yeah,
It was in, definitely.
and that's what I've kind of always focused on. And then race came afterwards. And because of that, and someone pulled me up on it, and it was a great point because growing up, I'll be honest, I just saw people as people. No matter race, culture, whatever, I just saw people and the barriers that I faced with a disability. And I said that to someone, and they said, "Oh yeah, but it's important to recognize people and their race and culture and things like that." And I guess it's a bit of a double-edged sword moment because I want to treat everyone and see everyone as they are, but I also recognize, and as Sharon has said, and you, Rachel, people have a history from their race and the challenges that they face, and that's difficulty when getting work or accessing healthcare. So acknowledging it and seeing people with the intersectionality definitely adds more of an appreciation and understanding of someone as well. So it does help with learning about a person. It's more than just them. There's a lot more to that person when you add all those layers.
Absolutely. And I like how you say, Isaac, you add all those layers. You're more than just, there's so many other layers that you see. I mean, once we did the introduction and I said I was this, but I'm more than just a
Mm.
mum, a daughter, caring for my mother. It's more than that. I've lived on this planet for so long. I shan't say my age, but I've lived on this planet for so long, and you've seen so many things happen. It makes you have that sort of view for that situation. And being a woman who is of colour or black, I yeah, I do feel sometimes, especially in the early stages of my career in public sector, I would be I'd go into the room and I'd be the only black manager there, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, yeah. And you don't have an imposter syndrome. I've never really had that imposter syndrome, to be fair. If I'm there at that meeting, I know I'm there at that meeting because I know my stuff. So I know that I've earned that in regards to that. But you do sometimes feel, I've noticed that, yeah, I'm the only black person there. So, it's the only black manager. And also at the time when I became a manager in the local government, I was the youngest too at the time, compared to my peers who was on the management team with me. So that was quite interesting, actually. But we were all women because the sector I tended to work for tended to be all women. Tended to be more women tend to be within that sector. But yeah, it was. You do think about things like that, and I mean, I can't say others do, but I certainly did think about that when I started back over. Oh God, it was 2004, I think. Yeah, that's when I started local government. So yeah, and it's changing. The face of it is changing.
Absolutely.
I can say it is absolutely changing. It really is, and that's for a good. But as there is still. And still not a high percentage. There is people there, don't get me wrong, and I don't know the figures and I wouldn't want to quote any statistics, but there is, that we should still see more people of colour breaking that glass ceiling, to be fair. And
Yes, yes.
yeah, there is, it's happening. You can see it happening, and I think that's to be, what's the word? I think that's to be applauded. But some people might take a different view and they say it's not happening quick enough. That might be the save. I don't want
Yeah.
my daughter, who is when she gets to my age, I want her, I don't want her to feel how I felt when I started out in regards to that. I don't want her to feel. I think there's a lot more awareness about it in
Yes.
regards to how people you can see the change when you look in organisations, meetings, you go to conferences, you can see the change happening. Maybe not quick enough, as I've said to somebody,
Yes.
but there is a change that happening, and I do hope that change continues as
Yes.
I grow older and my daughter becomes older in regards to become a young adult in that. But
I mean,
yeah,
yeah, it reminds me of how impactful social media has been,
yeah,
and giving people a platform to share their stories,
yeah,
be able to share their lived experiences,
yeah,
and people being interested in following these individuals and wanting to learn.
yeah.
Because before watching television, I never saw anyone apart from one individual with a disability, and he was black, and that was on Blue
Mm,
Peter.
mm,
And that's all I saw, and anyone I could really look up to. But
mm,
apart from that, there was no one. But now with social media, there's so many influencers now being able to share their story, being able to show off
mm.
their talent and what they can do. And it's really great to see people with that platform. As you say, it's still a lot of work to go, and we have a long way to go. But I am seeing progress, which is really great to see, especially for the younger generation.
The exposure on TV now from when we used to
Mm,
watch TV, because I was thinking about when I was growing up. Can you imagine? So what we used to do, was it a Thursday or a Tuesday? Top of the Pops, where
Oh
we
yeah.
could all sit down
Mm,
and music,
mm,
the people would come on, and if there was a black band on top of the pops, it would be like, you know, it would like be amazing, because you wouldn't see, you know,
Mm.
people representing you or your family makeup on the TV. But if you flip that now, you know, in all of the soap operas, there's a representation of everything. I can't tell you the last time I've watched one, but I've seen the adverts and things. And flip that to the exposure that the internet and social media gives people now. I mean, it's massive. And even, you know, you've got charities. We know somebody, Isaac, don't we, who is the face of Scope, you know,
Mm. Mm.
wheelchair user who happens to be a black guy. And, you know, for a charity which is quite well known to have that representation, is fantastic, because there are people in wheelchairs who happen to, you know, be of colour, who have a disability. And like you say, Isaac, that must have been such a surprise,
Yeah.
perhaps, to see
Yeah.
somebody on Blue Peter. But how did that make you feel?
I think at the time it definitely made me feel like, because this was way when I was younger and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. But to see that on television was like, oh, okay, that's someone that I could be like one day. Um Maybe back then that was my calling to be what I'm doing now in content creation and TV and film. Perhaps, I don't know, might have been said subconsciously, but seeing that definitely sparked a light in actually, yeah, I can do this.
And did it perhaps make you feel not so alone? Like there's other people out there who look like me, both physically and, you know, it must have been such an eye opener, so to speak.
Yeah, it definitely was an eye opener, but the only big difference was he didn't have a similar disability to mine. Because he still had like arms and legs, and again there was that slight difference of I never really saw someone with a similar situation to me with a disability. And that came later down the line. With disability and learning about the whole community, but it definitely was a start within the understanding and appreciating the journey of what I could achieve later down the line.
And that's why, for me, representation now uh,
It's
is so
important.
important, because it does give you that sense of, oh, there are people, you know, who look like me. You know, can you imagine in America now? They went from having a black president, and now to have a woman of somebody of color who happens to be female. But how many people is that? You know, even us, we had an Asian Tory leader. How massive is that, to be able to see representation on the TV,
Mm.
whatever your politics or
Yeah.
whatever. Seeing somebody who looks like you must be inspiring to, you know, your you know, people like your daughter Sharon, to actually see people on the
Yeah.
TV like as a norm
Yeah.
compared to what we
Yeah, it's
had.
the norm.
That
We
in
didn't see
itself is
that.
massive.
Yeah, we didn't see that when we were growing up. And I think it's really good, regardless of, as you say, someone's politics, that representation of a woman of colour wanting to become the leader of the Conservative Party is absolutely, you know, gosh, you know, we would never consider that. I remember when I just reflecting on who the first woman of colour MP was, you know, writing to her at 18 and saying, asking questions. It was just, you know, four of the MPs I wrote to actually, and she was one of them. And it was just, you know, it was just at that time. It was in the 80s, and you know, we didn't see that. And it just now, you just look at the House of
Mm.
Commons now. Just look at the number of women, people who are black, you know, it's just, and it's across parties, isn't it? It's across
Yeah, yeah.
parties, just where you think it's Labour, it is across the party. And I think that's something that we, if you take on board that and look at that, it is a positive, isn't it? It really is a positive. But there's more that can happen. I think we do agree that there.
but it's
I agree.
important.
Yeah.
It's important that happens, because if you think that's a natural progression,
Yeah.
back before the UK was such a melting pot of different people, there was a pool of people that would go into certain roles, and that pool was all made up of the same kind of people. Roll that on, the UK is made up of different people, and therefore everything should be representative
Yeah,
of the makeup of the community.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's a natural progression. The problem is when there's barriers to people progressing based on their,
Yeah.
based on their race. Not they might be the right person for the job, but there's barriers because they haven't got the same opportunities. And for me, that's where things are changing, because
Yeah.
we are seeing more and more people having access to opportunities that
Yeah.
we didn't have before. One of the things that really upsets my husband is when I was in school,
Yeah.
you had the careers officer coming to the school. I do not recall somebody coming and saying going to university was an opportunity for us where we lived. That's different now. So that is a massive change for the good. And is that because we were a very mixed school in East London? We weren't thought of as intelligent enough perhaps to go to university. Maybe it was just me.
I can recall I did have the opportunity to go to university. We had the careers office. And I remember when I was completing my PCAS and UCA form, and it was said that, you should, it was a supply teacher that had come in, and she'd said that because I'd written you had to do a supporting statement, and you can see my age because I'm going PCAS and UCA because you had polys and unis at the time. And you shouldn't write in a way that you feel that you've got a silver spoon in your mouth. That's what I do remember her saying that to me in regards to that.
Hang on, they were saying not to write, as if not
Yeah,
to write.
yeah. So I don't know because I wrote. How did the supporting statement go? Because I'd become. We were all trying to sort of like do things to put on our PCAS and ACA form for selections, and we'd helped at be part of the student union, and I can't exactly. It was that because she did say you shouldn't write that way. So because obviously you were coming from London, you have to select your ethnicity on the form, if I remember rightly. I'm going back over, God, how many years ago? 40 odd years ago. And it was just like, oh gosh, that's but it didn't deter me because I'm quite a determined person anyway in
That's good.
regards to that. That's me, and my mum and dad focus on education. And it didn't deter me at all, actually.
That's
But
really good.
when you get older, you reflect on things back like that, and you think, we go back and we talk about language, and the language that people use, if you're a person of color or if you're a person who has a disability, or the language can be sometimes can be quite sometimes upsetting in some sense, I suppose, in regards to that. But or maybe if you say that I know I raised once within a job I had that the language that's being used can be upsetting, and I said, oh, maybe you're a bit sensitive, and I'm thinking this is about one of the very first jobs before I started in public sector. It was, and I thought, and then you may think, is it you? But is it you? And there's the type of things you have to sort of think about in regards to that. I just, is you think of the language, it can be deemed as negative and how it's used, but to someone else, the language is more softer. And I do think it's really important that, and we talk about Black History Month, we do have to consider language, but as then I remember when I was younger, when they said, when I had that job, was it me because I was overly sensitive? I just think there is something there about the language that's sometimes being used to people of colour and a disability, if I'm making any sense with that. But I know where I'm going with that.
No, you make total sense. I mean, language now, I'll be honest, there's like a new term that's come out every week for any characteristic of a person. And it's just so hard to keep up because, you say one thing, oh, that was outdated last week, we're using this term now, and then it changes again the week later. And, there's so many different terms now. It's so hard to, and a lot of people get offended a lot easier as well, which makes it so difficult to know what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
And I always say, always ask the individual if they're happy with person with a disability or a black woman or whatever. If they're happy with that, then we should respect it, and that's what you call them. But this one shoe fits all nowadays. It's just not possible. You just got to speak to the individual, see what makes them comfortable, and then we should just respect it that way. Because we're
Yeah.
never going to get to a term where everyone's happy with, because there's so many now.
True. That is really true. There is loads there, and you don't know. And it is actually, I'd agree, asking the individual, what are you comfortable with,
Yep.
will actually sort of, it's a form of also respect for that individual and them. And also it shows that you've not offended if you've just assumed in regards to that. So yeah, that is good to ask the individual.
We've talked quite a lot, but we haven't really spoken about the topic of reclaiming the narrative. So just going to ask you both what it means to you personally and within the context of your own experiences or community. Reclaiming the narrative, what does that mean to you both?
Do you want to start, Rachel?
Yeah.
You on the spot
Yeah,
there.
I mean, to be honest, I wanted to be clear that I understood the topic correctly. So having, read about some statements about what that means, for me, it's about thinking back about my heritage and my experiences, and actually really appreciating what I've been through, how that has shaped me, and that my family, the extended family, growing up in Ilford, having people having similar journeys, parents who have come over from the Caribbean, all kind of like banded together, so to speak, and being proud of that, and not being afraid to talk about my experiences and situations, and yeah, just making bringing things to the fore, and where there's an opportunity to share my experience. Public speaking was something, Isaac will know, that terrified me, so I would always, not really say anything. But now, if there's an opportunity when I'm out my networking groups, and talking about, as I say, the experiences that I learned that my father went through when he came to the country, and talking about their struggles. And so, reclaiming narratives is about, first of all, what is your narrative? You can't talk about your narrative if you don't know what that actually is.
Mm-mm.
So taking some time out to actually understand what that means for you in itself, and then being proud and going out and talking about it. Not just in Black History Month, but as you
Yeah.
say, Sharon, this is our experience, this is our heritage, this is our culture, this is our it's our lives, and only
Mm.
by us talking about it, and sharing that
Mm.
with, even with our siblings. My experience growing up, my older brothers are 8 years older than me. Their experience to Isaac and mine are completely different. And by sharing that amongst each other, that is, talking, reclaiming our narratives, as it means to us as individuals, as it means as a family, and to our the wider community, really.
Well, I think for
Thanks,
me,
Sharon.
reclaiming the narrative is, I love me. I love that I am a woman. I love that I'm a Black. I love that I'm, I love that I have a daughter. And that is something to be proud for me, and having the support of my family, how we support my mum in her time as she becomes older and she needs more needs. That for me is all I'm reclaiming, that I'm of Caribbean descent. I am proud of that as a woman, and I'm proud of everything. And it's to be in as a positive, because I think when we were growing up, we were always told to. I think I went back to when they said you have to assimilate into the culture. It's not about that. It's about being proud of being a Caribbean, of my mum and dad bringing us up in where they weren't born. So I'm proud of that, and I reclaim that. And because as I grew up in the 70s and 80s, you didn't really want to, it was never sort of, you tried to assimilate into what was meant to be, what was that, right? But here, as I become older and have I understand on my journey, things has happened in your life, I am just, I appreciate my culture. I appreciate the things that I've gone through, and it makes me to reclaim. And also, I think I don't know, sometimes people have perceptions when they see if you're a woman of color, if you're black, and sometimes it's not right to have those perceptions because you could be wrong. And it was my 11-year-old daughter that said something to me, and this was just around the pandemic time. And I was driving her home from school because she was able to go into school because I was in social care. I was driving her home from picking her up from school, and I said I saw two ladies with a pushchair as we drove past the park, and I said, I thought the government said that you weren't allowed to you weren't allowed to mix households. And she turned around and said to me, Mum, you're assuming that they are separate households, but they're not. They could they could be married, they could live in that same. And she was possibly 9 at that time. So we must never assume when you see people in regards to that. That's her
assumptions.
I remember she said, you must, she goes, they could live together, Mum, they could be married. So they were pushed you. And I just assumed that they're like, when I had her, I'd go to the park and meet another mother and we'd have a chat. And, but she said no. And that's her brain of thinking. She'll keep me very young. I know that for a fact. We are all different. But we should celebrate that difference. We really need to celebrate it and appreciate it. So I love it.
I think a lot of people don't celebrate their own selves in any layer. And we definitely need to see a lot of that because, I think when you don't appreciate yourself, you end up not appreciating others or being grateful that the situations that you're in. I could say from my own experience, once I appreciated myself and worked internally, I became more grateful for the outside world and the people around me. So, I'm grateful for my narrative and for others like yours too today. It's great that we've been able to have this open and honest conversation. I was just going to say, to wrap up, I was just going to ask, as we think about the future, what are the hopes for our narratives about the Black community and how will that evolve? Before I leave it on a difficult one.
I don't think it's difficult to answer. It's not just a one-liner. It's an in-depth, the Black community. I hope it moves forward in the positive way that we're seeing, as we spoke about at the very sort of like halfway through, that we're seeing the change and we're seeing presence. You look on the TV, there are people of colour on the TV. There's, I would like to see, as it moves forward in that positive, we see more of people of colour breaking, is that still a term, breaking that glass ceiling? It's starting to happen, but you need to see more of that. And the pace in which it's happening, but some people may argue the fact that it needs to happen a bit more, but if I reflect back from when I was young, the Black community, we were in the times of the 1980s when Thatcher, the riots, and you see that negativity all around. But I think we're moving from that, and we are pushing into places, industries where you didn't see that. Not at a quick pace, but there is still pace happening. And I hope that when my daughter gets to my age, she can see, as Rachel said, look, we don't know what's going to happen on the 4th of November, do we, in America? We don't know. We really don't know. I want to have, there needs to be a positivity as we move forward in the Black community for the future. And I have hope, and also I think, an appreciation of Black culture and understanding it. I'm a person, as I think we said on this podcast, was that we want to know. I love knowledge. I love to understand about, when my mum carers come in and I ask them, what does your name mean in your culture? And I ask them, because I really am, but that's me as a person. But there are some people that don't. That's fine if they don't want to know. That's absolutely fine. You can't change that. But for me as an individual, I love knowledge and I like to know things. And because it gives me that appreciation and respect. We're all different. My mum used to teach us, look at your hands. They're all different. Look at your hands. All your fingers are different sizes and we're all different. And how you get to know, it's asking questions, get an appreciation of all those people who may not look like you. Ask them questions. It's usually sometimes that simple question you ask them that you find, oh, I didn't realise that. But I do hope for more positivity for the Black community and, more pace, and we can see more representations of people of colour within society. You can just take the NHS. Look at how diverse that is. When you go to the front line, you go to A&E or you go to a clinic. That's just it just is so positive. And also social care also too. You have
but then I could say you could flip that though as well and say the representation in those kind of sectors is because people of colour were, when they were invited, they were held back in certain roles and positions. Yes, they're at the front lines, but why are there not more Black doctors and more Black surgeons? It's because people historically have been held back. Like all the GPs there was a lot of Indian GPs because when they were invited to come to the country, they were they were educated to those roles, but they could have gone on to be so much more. But perhaps the positions of surgeons and the other positions weren't accessible to them because they were deemed higher and therefore given to the GPs who were, white GPs who were allowed to continue and grow. And I think for me, in response to your question, Isaac, is my hope is that the Black community comes together and supports each other more, as opposed to, you see a lot within the Black community, people wanting to pull other people down because they want to rise to the top. It's about collaborating and being more cohesive as a community and supporting. And that way, the community as a whole will only grow. And I say grow, there's probably a bit of a catch-all, but if you are good at your job and you happen to be a Black person, those barriers that are there for you shouldn't be there. You should be able to excel within your role, whatever you look like. If you have a disability, if you're if you're non-disabled, if you're disabled, if you're whatever your culture. So my hope is that the Black community excels and supports within, because only then will we then be able to grow outside of the Black community. We can't expect other people to support the Black community if the Black community don't support themselves.
Same can be said about disability and every other community that I'm part of.
Absolutely.
The collaboration seems to be gone, but I think conversations like we've had today are really important. We've had this open space, we've shared our opinions, and I hope we all have respected each other, what we had to say. But it's been really good getting to speak with you both today. And I'd just like to thank you, Rachel, for co-hosting with me, and Sharon as a guest. You've all been very valuable today. And just want to say thank you for everyone who has listened to us today. This being One Place in Conversations podcast, episode 16, speaking about Black History Month. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me. Take care. Bye-bye.
Everybody dance,
of your own experiences or community. And I know, oh,
Can you hear my ring doorbell? Sorry, I don't
yes,
have to
okay.
answer that. My sister's just phoned that, so I don't have to answer that, to be fair.
No problem. I'll ask it again.
Sorry. I'm really sorry.